Hi, Network. If you're just happening upon this, I'm Jacob, and I recently lost my job. In corporate speak, there was a larger restructuring that resulted in the elimination of several roles, including my own. The old "it's not you, it's me" routine. You know the drill. I posted about it on LinkedIn, I got a lot of support, a lot of love, probably more than I deserve if I'm being honest. I'm not going to drop names, but thank you to everyone that reached out. It was a little strange because a lot of people treated me like I was really broken up and this was some kind of travesty, but if I'm being honest, emotionally, it wasn't especially taxing. And maybe I haven't fully processed this loss yet, and I'm going to have a breakdown next week while grocery shopping. But until you see me sobbingly putting boxes of pasta noodles into my shopping cart, I'm just going to be pushing forward. Maybe this reaction is due to some kind of buildup of emotional restraint that I gained from working in sales, or it could be, and this is the far more likelier option, that I was already making plans to transition to my career. And this unfortunate event just happened to unexpectedly accelerate these plans, which is what I wanted to talk about today. When I entered my current field, I had a 2-year plan. I wanted to gain the fundamentals of sales and work on them to a degree of success I could be proud of. Ask anyone, the skills necessary for sales are going to be beneficial no matter what field you end up in. I completely agree there. What I was told, though, was that to leave sales, if you're not planning on spending your whole time in that department, is it might be wise to not spend more than 2 years there. Typecasting and whatnot, I know it sucks. And without knowing exactly what I wanted to be working as, I did know that I didn't want to spend my whole life in sales. If we look at my resume, if I were to take another sales role, almost every bullet point would be pigeonholing me into this career, which makes it much harder to move out. Now, it would be easy in the near future to continue down this path, but it's not for me. I've just about hit that 2-year period, and I already made the decision to where I want to move to next. Now, that's not to say that I didn't enjoy all my previous roles and appreciate what I took away from my most recent work experiences. Like I said, the skills I've gained so far are never going to not be of use. I mean, I have enjoyed my jobs, the people I had the opportunity to work with, the missions I've gotten to work towards, and above all, the knowledge that I've collected in the process. Long term, however, sales really doesn't align with what I want. This is a double diamond. Donald Norman, who I like to call the Don, brought this process of problem identification and solution ideation into the mainstream. Now, maybe you've seen this before, but if you haven't, the big idea, and why this double diamond is so significant, is that as it forces the prognoser to consider the bigger picture, considering different viewpoints, questioning their own reasoning before narrowing down to the correct problem. Now, since coming across this framework, I try to incorporate it into all of my life's problems. I found that there is always more than one way to skin a cat, but it's really easy to forget that fact when you don't force yourself to remember it. Months ago, I performed one of these when trying to figure out why exactly I wanted to migrate professional fields, and what would be my next step. And it looks something like this. Now, from the problems that I identified, I concluded that my central issue was long-term career satisfaction. Now, to break that down, I have some core elements that I want to minimize in my next steps. First is hostility, and in terms of sales, you might know what I'm talking about. I don't mind chaos, in fact, I like to think I thrive under it, but when such a significant amount of my role is dedicated to what is essentially verbal combat, it can take a toll, which also leads into my next point, which is that my work was somewhat isolating, partly because of the nature of the role, but also because I was working remotely. I know there have been months, plural, where the longest face-to-face dialogue I had was giving my order to the worker at Panda Express. Now, I want to have this hybrid or in-person experience with cheap office coffee and water cooler talk, and most of all, other people that I can see face to face and be around, and this is saying something because if you know me, I'm consistently the most socially awkward person in the room. Another thing I noticed about my current role, which I wasn't a big fan of, is that it is very prescriptive and has very hard guardrails, which most tasks in any role should be prescriptive and have guardrails. But the problem I have with sales is that there's only so many ways that you can deviate from the formula before it doesn't work. I mean, I like to brainstorm, I like to try and tackle a large task, and have a way to see the impact of my unique thoughts on some kind of outcome, and there's a limit to that in sales. There's also a great underutilization, I felt like, of some of my hard and soft skills. You know, I like to flex all my muscles, I'm vain like that, and sales doesn't allow me to do that as much as that I'd like. You know, I created multiple outside of work-related projects during my sales career that leveraged my more technical skills, purely because I needed that outlet. I want a job that would give me that in my actual work. And the last and maybe the most important aspect of this analysis is I found that I really didn't have a personal vision of my future. Now, long term, it just seems that sales beget sales, or sales leadership. Now, I have always had respect for my management, but I cannot look at those I know in these positions and be excited about me filling that spot one day. It isn't me. And after looking at things from many angles as I could think of, data popped up. Now, this conclusion wasn't surprising. I've always had a personal appreciation for numbers. Those that have seen my sheet know that I literally chart my life in Excel. I majored in advertising strategy and I love the execution of ideas, but even more so I love being able to explain why something has or will work. A/B testing, Qualtrics surveys, just analytics in general. The quantitative aspects of marketing are arguably more entertaining than the execution. And getting to share those insights brings its own kind of fulfillment. It's no surprise that in college when I competed in the NSAC, I was in charge of budgeting and calculating impressions and the return on the campaign, but I was also one of the team's presenters. I got to share my findings and I love that. One of my all-time favorite moments in college was this really simple data visualization presentation. Now, just before we presented, the professor gave feedback to the group that had just gone that if they really wanted to get their message across, they should have circled back to their purpose that they stated before giving their insights in order to drive home why their analysis was important. And you can only imagine the stupid grin I had on my face when my group went next, and I presented a slide that did exactly that at the end. And I acknowledge how incredibly nerdy it is to say that that's one of my favorite memories from college, but it genuinely is. It was just a small thing that really made me feel like I was understanding and grasping, this field. And data isn't something that I just like to reminisce about. I mentioned before that I made work for myself when my regular tasks weren't getting at that itch. Now, at work, I quickly became the Salesforce guy on my team when somebody wanted to know how to set a group of filters to get a different view of a report, or where they could find a metric that they just assumed isn't being tracked. I came up with excuses to create my own spreadsheets that had custom formulas and logic-based formatting to automate tasks like track revenue and audit other reports. One week I spent hours after work creating a Power BI dashboard using Salesforce data just to track KPIs that I was interested in that weren't necessarily readily available. All this to say that I feel confident in where I want to go next, and I have already started taking steps to see that I get there. For the past few months, I've been meeting with people in roles more aligned to the ones I'm aspiring towards, and learning from them how I can get ready to enter the data field. And the most common piece of advice, hands down, was to work on projects, have a portfolio, and that's exactly what this is. And it's a little more intensive than the simple dashboards that I'm used to making. Now, this web series is meant to document my journey of exploring, manipulating, and analyzing data as I get ready to enter this new field. I have several deliverables planned out that should be released at regular-ish intervals, at least one every Monday is the goal. In the end, the plan is to have all of this filled up. There's going to be delivers that will showcase my desire to learn, the actions I'm taking to build my skill set, and display my passion for this field that I'm hoping to create a space for myself in. And while TikToks and LinkedIn Reels might get more views, for this work that I'm going to be doing, there's a lot of value in preparation and following a process, which is why I'm sticking to long form video for now, where I can actually demonstrate that. I briefly considered doing write-ups, but if you didn't know, nobody reads anymore. I want to go over the KPIs that I'm going to be tracking because I am a very professional business strategist. The main objective is to accept a job offer for a data-centric role. I'm not naming any specific titles right now. I think it's important to be very broad. KPIs I'm going to be looking at are going to be applications sent, number of first, second, third round interviews, projects completed, networking meetings, and there's likely going to be more things that I'm going to be tracking that I don't even know I should be tracking yet. My professional journey right now is following the terribly common cliche of being unlike anything I thought I was planning for. I'm nervous, anxious, and a lot of other things right now. And I know I have no idea what lays in store for me next, and that's exactly how I want to keep things for the time being. By my estimates, I have about 15 years of youth left in me until I have a midlife crisis where I do something like purchase a decommissioned train car and spend my last dollars renovating it into some kind of heinous home to live in. But for now, I'm excited about this experience. I mean, who knows where I'm going to be in a year's time. Before I go, I want to thank everyone again for the continued support and all the experiences that you have influenced in my life that have made me who I am. It's hard finding new ways to say how much I appreciate you, but again, thank you. And I will be seeing you around.
So, first things first is I haven't been getting like a lot of views or whatever on my videos, so if you guys could share like with your friends and stuff, I would really, really appreciate it. Okay, so the topic of today's video is being yourself. And it's like, well, aren't I always being myself? And like, yeah, for sure. But sorry, I'm reading these off paper. Okay.